So, uh, I want you to try and picture a map in your head for a second.
Okay.
You've got your clear territories, right? Nations, states, cities, places where the laws are written down and the identity is totally clear.
Right, where you know exactly where you stand.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But then I want you to look at the edges, the blurry lines, that sort of no man's land where the rules of one side don't quite apply yet and the rules of the other side haven't really started.
We call that the borderland.
The borderland,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And while it's definitely a physical space on a map, it's also, what's a psychological one?
Oh, absolutely.
It's this headspace where identities get messy and where you just feel stuck, where the standard social contracts we all rely on just seem to break down. And that is exactly where we are living for this deep dive.
It is such a fascinating concept to explore, and to map this territory, we are looking at a source that is honestly a bit different from our usual, white papers or tech review.
Yeah, a little bit of a curveball today.
We are doing a deep dive into a sermon. It was delivered in October 2025 by Phillip Gibson, and it's titled, On the Way We Learn to Return.
Now, before you tune out thinking we're about to just do a Sunday school lesson,
Yeah,
hold on.
right. Stick with us.
Yes, the source material is a sermon. And yes, it's based on an ancient text from the Gospel of Luke. But the mission of this deep dive isn't to preach at you.
Not at all. We are analyzing this text as a framework. Gibson uses this story, the story of the 10 lepers, to construct a really gritty model for understanding social marginalization
Yeah.
and the psychology of trust, and the difference between simply fixing a problem and actually becoming whole.
It's almost like a case study in human behavior under extreme pressure. So we're going to cover the geography of exclusion. We'll look at a specific theological framework Gibson uses called the three graces.
Which is actually quite a rigorous system.
It is. It really is. And then he grounds it all in a very modern and very sharp piece of reality involving immigration and protest in Illinois in 2025.
It's a huge range. I mean, we are going from ancient Samaria to a detention center in Broadview, Illinois.
So let's start with that concept of the borderland. Gibson makes a huge point about the setting of this ancient story, because it's not just happening on some random road.
Right. The text actually says Jesus was traveling through the region between Samaria and Galilee. And historically speaking, this is a crucial context.
Break that down for us.
Well, you have the Jews in Galilee and the Samaritans in Samaria, and they were bitter multi-generational enemies.
Right.
They did not mix. They had different temples. They had different texts, different ethnicities. They essentially hated each other.
So the physical space between them was just a vacuum.
It was a total void, a place for people who basically didn't fit in either society. And that is exactly where we find the 10 lepers.
And when we say lepers, we really need to strip away that cartoon image we might have.
Definitely.
In the ancient world, this wasn't just, a bad skin condition. It was a death sentence for your social life.
Complete social death. Gibson paints this so vividly in the sermon. If you had leprosy, you were declared unclean.
Yeah.
That meant you were legally banned from your family, banned from your job, banned from religious worship. You were pushed out to the absolute margin of human existence.
And what's wild is that the text implies their shared misery actually erased their deep-seated prejudices.
Yeah.
You've got Jewish lepers and at least one Samaritan leper just hang out together.
That's the irony of the borderland right there. The social hierarchy completely collapses. They were united by their exclusion.
Yeah.
And Gibson notes that they follow the rules of that exclusion perfectly. They see Jesus coming, but they don't run up for a handshake.
No, they keep their distance.
They stand far away and they scream out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us."
That distance is just heartbreaking to think about. It's that psychological state where you desperately need help, but you've internalized the idea that you are too toxic to get close to the source of that help.
It is profound isolation. And Gibson pivots right here to the modern day. He argues that the borderland is full of people right now today.
It's not about ancient dermatology.
Exactly. He lists the incarcerated, people battling severe addiction, those in deep poverty and racial minorities.
He also makes a very specific connection to the LGBTQ community here, too.
He does. He suggests that many LGBTQ individuals live in a kind of social borderland. They might physically live in a town, but they exist in this space of uncertainty.
Constantly on edge.
Right. They're close to families, close to churches, but constantly having to ask, am I safe here? Am I actually wanted, or am I just being tolerated? It's that exact same standing at a distance dynamic from the story.
That image really stuck with me. Being close enough to see the community, but not knowing if you can actually step inside without getting hurt.
It's powerful.
So back to the story. You have this mixed group shouting for mercy. And this is where the mechanism of the miracle gets really interesting to me. Because usually in these stories, the healer touches them or just says, be healed.
Right. Instant fix.
But that doesn't happen here at all.
No, it doesn't. Jesus gives them an administrative task. He literally says, go and show yourselves to the priests.
Which honestly sounds like a brush off, like go see the manager.
It sounds totally bureaucratic, but it was the law. The priests were the public health inspectors of the day.
Right.
They were the only ones with the actual authority to write out the certificate of cleanliness that allowed you to go back to your wife, your kids, your job.
But the catch is, and I think this is the absolute key insight for the whole first half of the deep dive, they weren't healed yet.
Right.
They looked down at their hands and they still had leprosy.
That is the tension of the text. Gibson highlights this one phrase, as they went, they were made clean. The healing was strictly conditional on the movement.
Stop right there for a second, because that is such a profound psychological insight. We usually operate the complete opposite way. We do. I want to feel confident before I apply for the job. I want to feel forgiving before I reach out to the person who hurt me.
We constantly want the evidence before the action. Gibson argues that this story flips the script entirely. They had to actually walk toward the health inspector while they still looked and felt sick. They walked on the strength of a word.
It's acting your way into a new way of thinking, rather than thinking your way into a new way of acting.
Precisely. It requires completely suspending your current reality, saying, I am sick right now for a future possibility I will be well.
So they start walking. And somewhere along the road, the condition just vanishes. They are clean. This is the happy ending. All 10 guys get their lives back.
In a utilitarian sense, yes, it's a 100% success rate. But then comes the plot twist. One guy turns around.
The famous 1 out of 10.
And Luke, the writer, drops the detail that actually matters. And he was a Samaritan.
The double outsider. The foreigner.
The one who arguably had the least reason to trust a Jewish rabbi in the first place. He returns shouting praises and just falls at Jesus' feet.
Now, Gibson says something super interesting about the other 9 here. Because it's really easy to just paint them as the villains, right? Like ungrateful jerks who took the money and ran. But Gibson actually defends them, doesn't he?
He does, and this is where the real nuance comes in. The other 9 weren't bad people. They were obedient people.
Interesting.
Think about it. Jesus told them, go to the priests. So they went to the priests. They were following the instructions to the letter. They were rushing back to reclaim the lives that had been stolen from them.
They were just rule followers. They did what they were told, and they got the result they wanted.
Exactly. They were obedient. But the Samaritan was worshipful. And this leads to the core distinction Gibson makes in the sermon between being cured and being made whole.
Unpack that for us.
Yeah.
Because physically speaking, they're all in the exact same boat.
Physically, yes. They are all cured. The disease is gone. But Jesus says to the Samaritan, rise and go, your faith has made you well. And in the original Greek, that phrase often implies salvation or wholeness. The 9 got the cure. They got the biological fix, the social restoration. But the Samaritan got wholeness, which Gibson defines as being recentered in the actual source of the mercy.
So being cured is transactional. Like I had a problem, you just fix it, transaction over.
Yeah.
But being whole is relational.
That's a fantastic way to put it, transactional versus relational. And Gibson ties this directly to the concept of gratitude. He argues that real gratitude isn't just polite manners.
Right.
It's not sending a thank you card because polite society says you should. He calls it a turning that keeps turning.
A total reorientation.
Yes. The 9 were naturally oriented toward their old lives, getting back to normal. The Samaritan reoriented his entire life around the healer.
Now, to explain this process, Gibson brings in some pretty heavy intellectual furniture. He uses Wesleyan theology, which makes total sense given his background, to map this out. And I think this is worth breaking down for you listening because it actually creates a really solid system for how this kind of transformation works. He talks about the 3 graces.
It sounds super academic at first, but it's actually very practical.
Sure.
Think of it as a 3-stage process of interaction.
Okay, let's walk through them. Stage 1.
Prevenient grace. The word prevenient comes from the Latin prevenire, which literally means to come before. This is the idea that God's mercy meets people before they ever make a move.
Right.
Before they ask for help, before they fix themselves.
So in the context of the story, this is Jesus showing up in the borderland in the first place.
Correct. He entered their space. He initiated the contact. That's prevenient grace. It's the grace that comes before we even know we need it.
Okay, got it. Stage 2.
Justifying grace. This is the making right. Gibson connects this to the moment of trust, that as they went moment we talked about. When you step out in faith, you are aligned with the help that was offered. You are justified.
The 9 lepers got this far. They received the grace, they acted on it, they were justified or cured.
Exactly. They actively participated in the miracle, but they stopped at stage 2, they got what they needed, and they left. Stage 3 is sanctifying grace.
And this is the Samaritan.
This is the process of being made holy. Now, Gibson is very careful here. He clarifies that holiness doesn't mean having some private spiritual glow or walking around being holier than thou.
Right, not a superiority thing.
Not at all. He defines sanctifying grace as a life that is permanently oriented toward gratitude and service.
So you don't just take the cure and leave.
Yeah.
You return, and then that gratitude actually propels you into a completely different kind of life.
It's the literal difference between a transaction and a transformation. Justifying grace fixes the legal or physical standing, but sanctifying grace actually changes the person's nature.
Now, speaking of transformation and the real world to live in it, Gibson takes a very sharp turn in the second half of this sermon. We leave the dusty roads of ancient Samaria and drop right into Broadview, Illinois in September 2025.
This is where he really grounds the theology. He asserts that if this prevenient grace is real, if the divine is truly found in the borderlands, then that is exactly where modern people of faith need to be.
Yeah.
Not just hiding in safe sanctuaries, but out in the messy places. Prisons, hospitals, disaster zones.
And to illustrate this, he cites a specific documented incident.
He does. He references a video that was released to the public regarding an event outside an ICE facility, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And the details he reports are quite graphic.
Walk us through what the source actually says happened there.
The report describes an ICE agent who was stationed on a rooftop and fired pepperball projectiles, which are essentially chemical irritants, down at a group of demonstrators. But these weren't people throwing rocks, they were clergy.
He names the specific people, right?
Yes. He mentions Reverend David Black, a pastor from Chicago who was struck in the head while he was praying, and Reverend Anna Carden, a United Methodist pastor. Her testimony was that she was fired upon while she was kneeling with her eyes closed and her hands raised in prayer.
Okay, so this is obviously a highly charged, highly political image. Why does Gibson bring this into a sermon about ancient lepers? Is he making a specific policy argument about immigration law here?
He explicitly says in the text, quote, whatever one's politics, unquote. So his point isn't to debate the border policy itself in that moment. His point is to illustrate the actual danger of the borderland.
The danger of the no man's land.
Right. He's saying that when you stand in the gap, when you physically stand with the lepers of today, the marginalized, you are standing in the line of fire. He says the image of clergy being shot while praying is a stark sign that neighbors are still at a distance.
So he's totally dispelling the idea that mercy is just soft or safe. He's saying if you go to the borderland to bring healing, you might actually get hurt.
It's a harsh reality check. He's saying we shouldn't be shocked when the work of mercy meets violent opposition. If Jesus walked the borderland and his followers are supposed to walk the borderland, they're going to encounter the exact same friction that naturally exists there.
That is a really heavy reality to sit with. You've got ancient exclusion, modern pepper balls, and this deep psychological need for healing. So what is the takeaway from all this? How does Gibson suggest a person actually navigates this kind of tension without just burning out or giving up completely?
He kind of boils the whole story down into this holy rhythm. It's a 3-step pattern for dealing with crisis.
Let's break that down because I think this is the practical toolkit for you listening at home. Step 1.
Cry out for mercy. It sounds simple enough, but it's actually a profound admission of need. And Gibson emphasizes crying out for everyone involved.
Not just one side.
Right. You pray for the immigrant, yes, but you also pray for the officer on the roof. You pray for just policies. You have to start from a place of humility, not arrogance. You admit that the situation is fundamentally broken.
Step 2.
Do the next faithful thing. This goes right back to the as they went concept. You don't wait for the Supreme Court to perfectly fix immigration before you act. You don't wait for the ultimate solution to systemic poverty.
You just start walking toward the priest.
Exactly. You accompany a neighbor to court. You donate to the local food bank. You de-escalate a conflict on the street. You take the medicine. You make the apology. You just do the small, immediate action that is right in front of you. It prevents that feeling of total paralysis.
And step 3. This is the one the 9 lepers missed entirely.
Return with thanksgiving. When you see a breakthrough, however small it might be, you have to stop. Maybe a protest remains peaceful. Maybe a family gets temporary housing. Maybe an unjust law is blocked. You don't just immediately rush to the next fight.
You pause.
You stop. You return to the source. You give thanks.
That right there is the sustainability mechanism. If
Yeah.
you just cry and do, you burn out completely.
Exactly. The return is what actually refills the tank. It's what makes you whole, rather than just a busy activist or a stressed out worker. It acknowledges that the success didn't come just from your own effort, but from something bigger.
There's one final nugget in the source material that I absolutely loved. It's a linguistic connection that sort of ties this all together, especially for the church crowd.
Oh, the Greek connection. Yes.
Gibson looks at the specific word for Thanksgiving used in the original text,
Right. The word is Eucharistia.
which sounds very familiar.
It does because it's the root of Eucharist, the term that many Christian traditions use for communion or the Lord's Supper.
That is such a fascinating link. So when a church gathers and performs the Eucharist,
Gibson argues they are literally reenacting the role of the Samaritan. They are the ones who have deliberately returned from their busy lives to give thanks Eucharistia before being sent back out again.
wow,
It totally reframes the ritual from just a solemn religious duty into this really dynamic act of returning to be made whole.
it makes gratitude a public testimony, not just a private internal feeling.
Gibson says, and this is a great quote, "Gratitude grows legs and hands. If it just stays in your head, it's really just a thought. But if it returns and then goes back out to serve, that is true holiness."
So to recap this holy rhythm for you one last time, cry for mercy, do the next faithful thing, return and give thanks.
It's a loop, and it's the only reliable way to survive the borderlands.
You know, as we wrap this deep dive up, I really can't stop thinking about those 9 lepers, the successful ones.
It haunts you a bit, doesn't it?
It really does. Because in our world, they are the winners. They are efficient. They followed the protocol perfectly. They got back to work. They probably went on to have great careers and happy
They
families.
checked all the right boxes. They were cured.
So here is the thought I want to leave you with today. In your own life, in your career, your relationships, your personal growth, are you the 9? Are you so focused on fixing the problem, getting the promotion, following the rules, and just getting to the destination that you completely miss the connection?
It all comes down to that central question. Are you cured or are you whole? You can be highly successful and still be totally fragmented. You can be clean and still be completely lost.
The cure is getting what you want. Wholeness is knowing who you actually have to thank for it.
And realizing that the gratitude is actually the fuel for whatever comes next.
That's the deep dive for today. Thanks for exploring the Borderland with us.
Take care.